So, hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm here as always with my co host, John Micton. John, how are you doing?
Good, Dan. And I'm kind of excited because I know you got the opportunity to travel to Saudi Arabia. And I think, for somebody that hasn't been in that country or that part of the world, there's always, so many questions and it's so many history and culture. There's just so rich. And so I'm really looking forward that you've gotten this panel together of IT directors and school leaders from that region, and also you having traveled there. And I know you came back very excited. And I'm just wondering what kind of got you so excited about going to Saudi Arabia?
I think it's interesting. I did a couple of trips with my family to the Middle East. We spent 3 months in Dubai. We spent 3 months in Bahrain, and I've been to Saudi a couple of times. And I'm just fascinated by the region. I think, I've heard several people say that Saudi Arabia is the new China, in terms of opportunities, what China was in maybe the 90s. That's the kind of opportunities in Saudi with the growth. So I'm really interested about it. Obviously we hear things about Neom, the new city, and the line, and all that kind of thing. So we've got a really interesting group of people on here today who all work in Saudi Arabia. And what I think I'd like to do is, first of all, we'll get everyone to introduce themselves, and we'll talk about what it's like living there, what are the opportunities, and get into that discussion, which I think will be interesting for anyone, not just tech directors. Anyone who works for an international school, I think it will be really useful because there's huge opportunities for international school educators. And then I'd love to get into the tech stuff. John, you and me are tech guys. Everyone on the call is a tech director, so we get a bit into some of the tech issues and opportunities in Saudi. So, first of all,
Fantastic.
everyone, welcome to the podcast. It'd be great to have a quick introduction. If we could go maybe Paul, Zishan, Khalid, and then Donovan would be great.
Thanks, Dan and John. All right, so my name's Paul Collins. I'm the IT director at the British International School of Riyadh. This is an international school that's been here the last 30 years. I believe it might have been one of the first international schools, I'm not sure. We currently have 5 campuses around Saudi, and we're currently in the process of building 2 more that will come online in August in 2024. And I've been here with the school for just going on 6 months now. So I'm probably the freshest person here to Saudi amongst you all. But I've got about 30 years experience working in IT, 10 of which were senior management IT positions in international schools in Dubai, Hong Kong, and Myanmar before this.
Fantastic. So, Zishan.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you for having me on this podcast. And my name is Zishan. I'm IT director at Miss Schools. I've been here just over 2 years. This is my 3rd academic year. Before here, I was working as IT director in the UAE at one of the GEM schools. Miss Schools is part of the Crown Prince's not-for-profit foundation. It's a school that's focused on developing the future leaders of Saudi Arabia. My background is teaching and learning. I'm a teacher by background. I started off in the classroom, eventually worked my way through a number of roles there in teaching before eventually becoming an IT director. So I think the reason I moved to MISC and this opportunity came about is that I have that mix of that background in teaching and learning as well as that IT expertise as well. So yeah, that's me. Feel free to ask any questions.
Sounds good. Fantastic. Thanks, Zishan. Khalid?
Yeah, I'm Khalid Abdatam. I've been here at the school for the past 6 years in the American International School of Riyadh. Just like Zishan, I started more in the classroom. I've worked at the American school in Khartoum for 7 years before coming here and worked my way into the technology. My background does have to do with electronic engineering, so getting that transition from the classroom and connecting the edtech was very important. Our school is a little bit older than the British school. I think we're just at 60 years now. with one campus though. So we have about 1,500 plus students on campus, and the school continues to grow every year.
Fantastic. And Donovan.
Hello, thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm an avid listener. I've tuned into many episodes, so it's a privilege to be on here and with such wonderful company. My name's Donovan Hall, originally from New Zealand. I'm the EdTech Director at the Kaus School in Saudi Arabia. I've been here for now 8.5 years, like the gentleman in the room here. Arrived as a teacher in upper elementary and coming with an EdTech background in previous schools in Sudan and in Angola for that. I've been at the Kaus School in the position of EdTech Director for 4.5 years. And so for those people who aren't familiar with the Kaus School, we're a community school, international community school, and we serve the community of KAUST. And KAUST is King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. So we're a gated community of 8,500 people situated on the shores of the Red Sea. In a beautiful location in Saudi Arabia. So very fortunate to be here for 8.5 years and serving as the EdTech Director at the school.
Fantastic. John, you got anything to add before we jump in with some discussion?
No, it's so great to have you guys here at the International School Podcast. It's funny, Dan, we forgot to introduce the podcast. We said the pod. We just now are, it's obviously a sign of a certain arrogance.
No, well, I mean, if people click on our podcast, they already know it's the podcast, don't they?
I'm joking. Anyway.
It's true.
I'm just, yeah, and I love the fact that everybody's talking, kind of giving their background, and there's that blend of being a classroom teacher and a technician, and Khaled talked about engineering. I think that combination is so important today as a tech director. So I just want to applaud the schools and yourselves that, marry both those skill sets, the kind of more technical, but also the pedagogic and understanding what the creative tensions are in the classroom. So thank you so much. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I think before we get into like the opportunities in Saudi and what they are like, I don't know if anyone could give like a high level overview, like what are the different places you can work in Saudi, and then we can talk a bit about them from people who've lived there. Like obviously we know about Riyadh and Jeddah are the two biggest cities. I imagine that's where most of the opportunities are. Anyone want to jump in and say about what, where the international schools are in Saudi, and then we can get into what these places are like.
I can talk a little bit about Riyadh and Jeddah, and I know those places quite well. Apart from that, I can mention a few places, but Riyadh is your capital city. Very fast paced, very busy, and all the perks that come along with being part of that fast paced lifestyle, that fast paced city. The international schools, there's several of them in Riyadh. And for teachers and anyone thinking of coming to Saudi Arabia, most of the schools, they'll offer you compound-based accommodation where you live in family-friendly compounds. Jeddah is, again, another city in Saudi Arabia. I think from my opinion, a little bit less fast-paced, a little bit slower-paced, a little bit more relaxed, chilled-out atmosphere there. It's got a beach. It's on the coastline there. Again, it's a very nice city, lots to do, lots to see when you're there. And then you've also got other cities. You've got Dammam, which is on the other side towards Bahrain. Again, beaches there, nice lifestyle. Again, chill, more relaxed than Riyadh. And then you've got new projects such as NEOM, which is a huge development project which is happening in the north of the country, where of course there's a huge amount of construction happening, projects happening, and because of that there's communities that are happening there, schools are popping up there as a way to cater for the communities that are developing there and that are building up the projects there.
Khaled, you had something to share too. Thank you, Zehan. That's great. It's just great to get that overview.
And yeah, just to add to what Zishan is saying, so in the eastern province, in the Dammam and Khobar area, there's a lot of international schools. So there's ISG Group, which has many different schools in one. There's Aramco. So it's a little bit more relaxed than Riyadh. It's more of a beach scene or a coastal area, which is about an hour away from Bahrain. So you can go on the bridge, and an hour away, you're in another country. A lot of the projects are popping up in the West. And at the beginning, a lot of those families were stationed here in Riyadh, but now the cities are opening up and they're actually staying in Neom and in those areas. So yeah, there's many schools popping up even in Riyadh. There's a lot of international schools. We're expecting a huge growth within the next couple of years in terms of the number of international schools just within Riyadh as a capital. So the growth is going to be huge.
It's interesting talking about Dammam. So I was in Bahrain for 3 months. I was actually back there again end of last year. And funnily enough, anyone who's English on this call, I actually met Stephen Gerrard, who he works in Dammam now. He's a manager, unless he's been fired, because I know football managers get fired pretty often. But he lives in Bahrain. Interesting. A lot of people live in Bahrain. I imagine because it's more Western and people who want a more Western lifestyle. There's actually a huge bridge that connects Dammam to Bahrain, and he said he was driving there every day. Like he'd drive across. They train in the afternoon, and the evening. You drive across in the morning, drive back in the evening. It's kind of interesting. People do that kind of commuting lifestyle.
That's amazing to think, yeah, to come back and forth like that. I think one thing that, as you're sharing these rich geographic locations and the variety that you're describing of, beaches and the tempo of the cities, I'm wondering if there's certain myths about living in Saudi Arabia you can dispel, because I think so often there is a very naive and kind of narrow view of this wonderful culture and country. And I'm just curious, maybe Donovan and Paul, because you haven't yet shared, are there any myths you can dispel? And of course, Zeishan and Khalid jump in, but I'm just curious, are there any myths that maybe you can tell our audience, no, that's not Saudi Arabia? Paul?
Well, I'll give you my personal experience, and it's, as I said, I've only been here 6 months, so it's kind of limited. But what I've found is that the Saudi people are incredibly friendly. And I lived in Dubai for 5 years before this, and not to say at all that the Emirati people are not friendly, because they are also very friendly, but I have met way more Saudi people in the last 6 months than I did in Dubai of Emiratis in 5 years. And I just find them very hospitable, very welcoming, very interested, willing to share, and really very welcoming. Is probably the best way to put it.
So Paul, I found the same thing. I noticed the same thing in Bahrain. Bahrain and Saudi, like I meet a lot of local people. Like in the UAE, at least I personally didn't meet many Emiratis. Like you'll never go into like a shop and it will be an Emirati working there. Whereas in Saudi, you do actually have an interaction with the local people, which is interesting.
Donovan.
Yeah, much like Paul, probably 8.5 years ago when we first arrived, it sort of arrived at Kaust here and went on down to Jeddah and in IKEA and the people, the local people, super helpful, super friendly. One of the things as a result of the pandemic is that people couldn't travel, and so there was a lot of internal travel, and I think that really sort of opened up people's sort of eyes around what's available in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, because it's winter time. It gets pretty cold. When I say cold, I'll let people know what it could get to 18 and maybe to 30. That's the range here in Kaust, and I believe Riyadh's a bit cooler. So for those people listening, that's cold for us. But I think people travelled extensively throughout. We have people who have travelled over to Dubuque, to Neom, over to the East Coast, down to Taif, and everywhere, and speak really highly of their experiences and how safe and secure people feel, along the way, and how hospitable, people having car troubles and people stopping, rolling up and helping out, and just wonderful experiences. So I think, the pandemic, as awful as it was, certainly provided opportunities to travel in the kingdom and expose us to things we may not have been sort of open to previously.
I think that's interesting that you say that, because so often when you are an expatriate and it's the holidays, you tend to leave the country and go back to your home country. And often that kind of doesn't give you the opportunity to really dig in deep into the culture and the geography of the country. So that's interesting observation, Donovan. Thank you. Yes, go ahead, please. Khalid? Or was it Zeishan? Go ahead. I think you had something to share.
Yeah, sure. So I just wanted to add about things to do, just following on from Donovan. I think in the past couple of months, I've been to a World Championship boxing fight. I've seen a football game between Inter Milan and AC Milan. I've been to a Kevin Hart, comedy show. I've been to watch the Ladies Championship golf, a tournament here in Riyadh. So I think that's one myth which needs dispelling. There's so much to do here, so much to see and do. It's unbelievable the amount of events and things which are just happening on a regular basis.
I saw. It's funny when I saw a flyer. They're having like raves in Saudi now as well, isn't it? There's like electronic music festivals and things which you never would have expected. Like, I mean, I think it is. I think it's important to say that Donovan can. I guess you've maybe been there the longest, but it seems like the pace of change is accelerating in Saudi. It seems like what Saudi Arabia 3 years ago is a very different place from what it is today.
And like Zishan was saying, and being in Riyadh, like the access to like world-class events and opportunities and really tourism as well. So we've got phenomenal athletes, phenomenal cultural events throughout Saudi Arabia. Lots in Riyadh, like we have the golf next door, and it's been going for a number of years. But it's you have the Formula One and different things. And then opportunities, to go to the Red Sea and do diving on liverboards and things like that, and go snorkeling with whale sharks. Like, these are things that I wasn't really aware of until I sort of got here and started talking to people. But it's pretty phenomenal, the change of the environment, the things you can do, and then a lot of the things that have been brought into the kingdom that Zishan and no doubt Khaled would be able to testify to.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit more to what Donovan said regarding the weather. So I grew up in Iowa where it's 30, 40 below. And I came here expecting to be in the hot desert. And what's wrong? So it's dry here in Riyadh, which is completely opposite in Jeddah. But when it gets cold here, it hits the bone. But I was very intrigued and surprised to find out that once you travel up north, even more in areas that are close snow. This is a country that has all weathers in it. It has the desert, it has snow, it has the sea, which is beautiful. And to what Zion is saying, tonight there's actually a classic between Real Madrid and Barcelona here in Riyadh as well. So one of the big classicals is happening here, which is amazing. In the past, it wasn't something that's advertised a lot. Now,
Khalid, I'm sorry. I'm going to stop you because your voice is breaking and we unfortunately can't hear the great stuff you want to share. So I'm just wondering if you can just check and then come back and try. It just seems like you're losing a connection or something. It's
I'm very keen to, because I learned something just from what Khalid was saying. I didn't know there was anywhere with snow in Saudi Arabia. That's new. That's news to me.
You can go skiing, Dan. There you go.
Exactly.
Your next ski holiday in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, John and me were saying. I've actually just was skiing with my son this morning. I was up earlier to the mountains, back again. So yeah, You know what I'm really keen to talk about quickly, and then Paul is going to mention safety and security. Like people, I'm sure there's a lot of opportunities in Saudi. People hear that the salaries are high, the opportunities. So a lot of people are thinking about it. And one thing I think Zishan and Donovan mentioned is compound life. Like, and I wonder if, because I don't know much about that. I've been to where you live, which is like obviously a huge compound. It's the whole university. But can you guys talk about compound life? What is it? Where do foreigners live? What are these places like? Is it only for families, or can single people go there? I'd love any or all of you to give a bit of perspective about this compound living, which is kind of unique to a lot of countries.
Yeah, so I can talk about that in terms of safety and security. So coming from, well, Dubai, and anyone who knows about the UAE will know that it's an incredibly safe and easy and secure place to live. And I was, coming to Riyadh, I found it probably equally so. It's far safer, I would say, just in everyday life than Australia, where I'm from, the chances of being mugged or something are, I would say, nil. And I know Saudi may have in the past had a reputation about safety and security, but I think it's shrugged that off and now find, it's safe to walk around day or night anywhere. I live on a compound, and it does have a bit of legacy, kind of what I would say a bit over security from maybe 20 years ago. But living on the compound, it's very much like you could be anywhere in the world. Actually, it's the compound I live at, which is attached to the school. I walk to work. It's a 5-minute walk from my front door to my office, and it has all the facilities that you could possibly need in terms of like a clubhouse, and it feels like living on a resort, basically. Um, I've been there 6 months and I've yet to lock my front door. Maybe I shouldn't say that out loud.
When
Khaled,
you say
you're back.
facilities, like I guess you got swimming pools, gyms, is like a supermarket.
All that.
Is that
Yeah.
kind of what it's like?
Yeah, and there's like a bowling alley and squash courts, tennis courts, basketball courts. It's all indoor, air conditioned. And supermarkets and everything. I mean, people joke that you could actually just live on the compound and never leave it, and it's actually quite true. I find just to myself, I am so busy with my job. My life does become a little bit insular. I do have to get out a bit more.
Yeah. Anyone else want to jump in?
I just see Khaled's back. Khaled, do you want to go back and tell us, you were started with you're from Iowa, and just share that? I think it's important people get to hear it.
Oh yeah, I was just saying that I'm from Iowa, so I'm supposed to be used to the cold, but I wasn't ready for the cold here.
Interesting.
But I love it. It's for me. I love the heat now, so I enjoy the heat and I enjoy the summers here. And to add to what Paul is saying, we also live in a compound, and what's unfortunate for us is our compound is right. Our school is right in the compound as well, so it's a 3-minute bike ride home. And you get so busy that you spend more time here at work than you actually do at home. But the facilities are world class. It's a lot of people don't leave the compound, as you said, and they might leave once or twice because they have to, but otherwise you can live your whole life here.
Wow. Donovan.
Yeah, I think Cast, as I sort of said, is a gated community. It's quite a big one, and Dan, you visited it in a whirlwind tour. But when I came here 8.5 years ago, I came with just a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they've sort of grown up here, and the ability for them to have sort of independence and freedom. So for a couple of years, my grade 3 kid, she's been biking around to and from school, across roads and everything else, and I think that independence has been phenomenal. Something I grew up with in New Zealand, the ability to just jump on the bike and head out the gate and be safe all the way, and I don't know, I'd feel that way now, but it's fantastic, and we're very, very sort of fortunate with that as well. We just had a rugby day at the beach. We had a rugby club of about 120 kids, and getting down to the beach as a community day. So these are sort of wonderful opportunities that we have that maybe not too many people know that that exist. So very, very fortunate.
And so, and the background of all of this, of course, you're in your compounds or you're in your situations. There's a whole, Dan was alluding to it previously, there has been so much change that's occurred here in the next, if we just imagine the last 5 to 6 years. And I assume that change Donovan, you've witnessed it because you've been there the longest. How is that change impacting day-to-day life with the people that you interact with? Paul, you were talking how you're making connections with local Saudi citizens, and there's really a warm, engaging connection that you can develop with the local community. How are they dealing with this accelerated change? Because for a lot of them, this is very different than maybe what was before. I don't know who would want to jump in. Donovan, do you want to start, and then others can jump in?
Okay, I'll jump in. Yeah, there's I think it's the opportunities that are there. So I think from an educational perspective, at the university where we're at, we have a couple of programs running at the moment. It's called Elevate, and the Elevate programs are to develop business and education opportunities for Saudi Arabian graduates. So at our school we have around probably 20 Elevate students, and so they go on a 2-year program and looking at developing their knowledge of teaching and learning in an international environment. Come fully qualified with some phenomenal degrees, either here in the kingdom or abroad in the States, and with some amazing sort of science and technology background. So these are sort of some opportunities for them, and some of them become when they graduate become teachers at the Cow School here. We have I think about 3 in our kindergarten at the moment who are graduates. Some have gone on to Neon to teach as well, and we also have run that in the Cowes University in business and entrepreneurship as well. So there's a lot of work being done in there to in service of the kingdom and providing opportunities. Especially around sustainability, around some of the major projects, and partnering with them. So I think it's very sort of fast paced, and I think I'll pass it on over to some others to maybe talk a little bit more.
Thank you very much, Donovan. Seyhan, you wanted to add?
Yeah, so just following on from that, actually, I think Miss Schools is similar in the sense that we've just moved to a new campus. It's an unbelievable new campus with amazing facilities, and the idea is that to grow those future leaders of Saudi Arabia, to give back to the community, to provide opportunities and resources. So we've got unbelievable sports facilities. The staff and the students and the school community have access to a gym like I've never seen before. Within the school campus, the football pitches, we've got golf facilities coming up soon. So there's a real focus on providing opportunities, providing facilities for the community, for the students, for the population, for the people of Saudi Arabia. Just jumping back a little bit to the point of compound life as well. I live on a little bit of a smaller compound. We're lucky to have a beautiful villa. But my wife is here with me, so if I just stuck on the compound, she'd kill me. So we have to get out of the compound a little bit. The food scene is unbelievable. The restaurants, in Riyadh, you won't believe the amount of choice you have. The malls and things like that. There's a lot going on here. So I just wanted to bring it back to the compound a little bit. That although these huge compounds do exist, which are like holiday resort destinations, and they're amazing, there is some life outside of compounds as well. And you don't, if that kind of resort compound life isn't for you, there's other alternative types of compounds available as well, and there's plenty to do outside the compounds as well.
Zishan, it was interesting. You were saying that in the case of your school, you're talking about the incredible resources. And I know Donovan Kaust is also a Saudi Arabian educational institution. I'm assuming a lot of this development and all these amazing resources are really being pushed also in the local school systems, or is there the private sector and then the public sector? How are those juggling this, these changes? Are they equal, or they depends where you are in the country?
I think that there is an emphasis. Obviously, the school has its own student body, and we're quite new into this campus. So the focus at this stage, is giving our students those opportunities. But the plan for the school always has been for the youth of Saudi Arabia to be able to utilize these facilities. So we'll be, as a school, we'll be looking for the high performers up and around the country, and to bring them to school, or to let them use the Miss Schools facilities in all the capacity. We're looking to the ambitions of the country are very high. They want to develop leaders, they want to develop athletes, they want to develop top Olympians, and all of these facilities which are popping up around the country. It's with those ambitions and goals in mind, and it's there for the country to use.
Great, thank you.
I've got a quick. Sorry, Kelly, were you going to say something now?
Oh, I was just going to add to that. Going back a little bit further than the past 5 years, our school was not as diverse, but recently is becoming more diverse with a lot more of the local student body. And that's what Saudi is actually pushing for as well. And we've been working closely with the Ministry of Education to start integrating our school within the community a little bit more, whether it's training sessions for teachers from other schools or some exchange program. We're still at the beginning stages of that, but these talks have been happening. We've been communicating closely with the Ministry of Education to see how can we integrate our bigger community within this international community. In the past, I think there have just been two separate bubbles, but now as we see the demographic of the country being a little bit more diverse, seeing a lot more foreign companies, getting that integrated into the Saudi society is happening at a faster pace.
Thank you. Zehan.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, one thing I'd like to mention is where we also are focusing on the teachers as well, and the staff and the professionals in Saudi Arabia. My team is all Saudi Arabian. They're young, recent graduates from Saudi Arabia. They're working within the school in different IT roles. And that's a big focus of the school as well. We've got a teacher development program where we've found some of the best graduate teachers in and around Saudi Arabia, and they're actually coming into MIS schools and developing on a development program to shadow teachers, to teach lessons and learn from teachers who have experience internationally and are experienced in different curriculums, such as the British curriculum, American curriculum, and they're picking those things up. So we have clear pathways and progression opportunities for not only the students, but also professional level recent graduates for the local community here as well.
And I think it's so great to hear the stories of cross-pollination, leveraging the talent and the capacity of the local community and, putting that together. And it sounds like there's really a very strong effort and a mindfulness that's what the country is looking at, is how do we leverage all this talent that we have within the country. Dan?
Yeah, I want to ask about the opportunity, because I mentioned at the beginning about the growth, and I keep hearing different numbers. I'd love to get some information. I'm not sure if it was Zishan or Khalid. One of you was mentioning that Riyadh, which I believe is like 9 million people, it's close to London, is planning to double in size in the next few years. I know there's a city, there's Neom, where I don't know if people have heard of this. There's a city called the Line, which is, I believe, 200 kilometers long, with these two huge walls the size of the Empire State Building, 200 meters apart, and a kind of monorail down the middle. And it sounds like something from Blade Runner. Like I'm not sure I'd want to live there, but it's fascinating. So, I mean, clearly, if there's going to be Neom's a whole new city, there's I think another city. There's Riyadh doubling in size. Like there's going to be a lot of people coming in, which means there's going to be a lot of international schools opening and a lot of opportunity. And I'm keen to hear you guys, because you guys know more than I do about the growth and what's going on there right now. Anyone, Sishan?
Yeah, I there is a figure. I'm not going to say it because I'm not sure if it's accurate, but I do remember a figure being in the news recently. It's huge. The amount of international schools which are set to set up in Saudi Arabia over the next few years it's a huge number. I remember looking at the number and being surprised.
Someone told me 700 private schools are in plans, international and local privates, but I'd imagine it could be more than that if it's this many people.
Yeah. I think it was, the number I seen was a little bit more than that, but
right. Okay. Yeah.
I'd like to check it first before I say the number, but it's huge. Yeah. There's a huge amount of international schools and chains actually, which I'm hearing about, and I won't mention any institutional names because I don't want to announce something I shouldn't announce. But from what I'm reading, from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of schools due to come up and set up here in the next few years.
So that means there's going to be a huge demand for teachers, or actually leveraging, as you were describing, all of those teachers within the Saudi education system, making having them support those schools. That just sounds fascinating, especially when you hear a bit about this whole teacher shortage, and then you hear these numbers. We are not giving out numbers, but there is really a huge growth taking place. Paul.
Sorry. Yes, I mean the Saudi has a 2030 plan, which is to massively, modernize its infrastructure and systems that are in the country. And I think it's very ambitious. It's got a long way to go. The infrastructure in Riyadh is already struggling as it is with its 9 million people. So some changes to transportation will, for example, would have to dramatically take place. Like the traffic in Riyadh is horrendous as it is right now. And I say that coming from Dubai, where I spent the last 5 years, where if you think that the traffic in Dubai is bad, Riyadh's on a whole new level. But it's exciting, that's for sure. The Saudi government imposed a requirement on international corporations working in the Middle East that if they want to have business with the Saudi government, they have to move their headquarters to Saudi, to Riyadh, which in the last 2 years has brought a lot of expats into the country, and their families are having massive challenges of getting their children into schools. The school I work at has an enormous wait list. Like last I heard, it was more than 1,000 students.
Wow.
So, we're the new campus that we're opening in a few months, which should have a capacity of 2,000 to 2,500 students, will be full up from day one.
Wow.
So it's really amazing to see incredible change happening, month to month in a very fast-paced city.
That's amazing, and just the idea of that growth, and also, I think it's interesting you're using the traffic metric. I think that's always such a great metric to say how public transport and roads are doing depending on the traffic. So that's a great point of reference.
Great. Anyone else got anything on the growth? I mean, obviously we know Riyadh, there's Neom, Jeddah. I'm not sure. Donovan, is Jeddah kind of, you're just outside Jeddah to the north? Is that also growing?
Yeah, I don't have too much knowledge, but in talking with one of our colleagues, Nancy, who couldn't make it today, I believe their role's growing too, in the British school. So I believe that's happening as well. So I think it's across the kingdom.
Yeah, it seems like Saudi Arabia is going for a plan to kind of be the next kind of UAE. Obviously, they're looking towards a post-oil kind of world and trying to become this, global business center and financial center as well as kind of oil economy. It seems to be, what's kind of driving a lot of this growth and kind of opening up.
And how so there is this growth, schools are expanding, there is this huge demand. Are you seeing this not only in schools, but also so for services like, if you have to go to the doctor or flights and travel, are you noticing there are many more pinch points because of this accelerated expansion? Khaled?
Well, what I noticed here in Riyadh, and I think in the north of Riyadh, is we have about 3 hospitals that have been built within the last 6 months. One of them is already complete. Two of them are almost done within a 3-mile radius of the school. One of the biggest hospitals, I think, is Suleiman Habib in the region, has built a brand new hospital literally 1.5 miles away from here, and 2 more around where we live in our compound. So we do see a big expansion in that. And then also there's the big metro project that's been going on for a very long time, which hopefully will reduce this traffic Paul has been talking about, because once you hit traffic here, it's really bad.
Donovan?
Yeah, we live an hour north of Jeddah, so don't get down to Jeddah all the time, but do get out of the compound, because like others, my wife wouldn't be too happy living in here all the time. So when we get down, we notice significant difference in the, we don't see it on a day-to-day basis, but it's like, where did that building come from? There's crazy amount of construction, and I have some colleagues who in rugby club who work down in Jeddah, and the projects that they're involved in here is amazing. And it's quite crazy, the amount of growth that's happening in that industry. And also one of the things over the last, I suppose, maybe year and a half, is the amount of airlines and destinations that are flying in and out of Saudi Arabia. And that's changed significantly. Wizz Air have come into the kingdom, and now you can fly to multiple destinations. So you've got a lot more people coming into the kingdom from various sort of locations and in and out too. So airports are busier than they have been before.
I like that story where you say you drive down to Jeddah and suddenly there's a new building. I remember living in Beijing in the late 90s and early 2000s. And when I was there, there was the third ring road, and now there's 9 ring roads, And I remember they were building the fourth, and it was just, exactly this kind of unbelievable acceleration and the energy and the capacity to really build and create new infrastructures is just kind of mind-boggling, especially when you go down, as you said, you go periodically and suddenly you see that. It's a great anecdote.
Definitely. Donovan?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in there too. And I noticed in Jeddah and places I've visited, they're doing a lot also to preserve heritage sites. So Alula, as an example, there, Al Balad in Jeddah, a historical site. They're doing really a lot to restore and maintain that and protect it. I'm not so much, I haven't been to Riyadh, but I'd imagine the same would be the case there, doing an awful lot to look after that and then provide people access too.
Zishan?
Yeah, just following on from that, and that's a really good point from Donovan. I just wanted to mention the culture in Saudi Arabia. There's a huge amount of history and culture here, and I really do encourage anyone who comes here to embrace that and speak to the locals. As I think it was Paul who mentioned earlier, that they're very hospitable. I lived and worked in the UAE for a long time as well, and obviously the proportion of expats to locals is very different compared to Saudi Arabia. Here, you will have opportunities to interact with locals, learn about the traditions, learn about the culture, learn about the history of the country, and there's a huge amount to learn. And I really do encourage anyone who visits here to embrace that.
You both, some of you were mentioning your partners, spouses, wives. There's also a bit of a myth about women, the role of women and the role, how they position themselves within society and accesses. Has that significantly changed? And for the, thinking, Donovan, you've been there 8 years, and some of you've just come. I'm just curious for our female audience, what is it like to live in Saudi Arabia as an expatriate and being a woman?
I don't want to jump in there and make some assumptions on behalf of women, but
I'm
speaking on behalf of all the women in the world, Donovan.
No. I'm just saying in the context of your own families and your partners, how have they noticed the changes? Maybe that would be a more appropriate.
Well, I think when we came in, my wife at the time, due to law, couldn't drive in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And clothing was significantly different to it is, and those are two things that have changed as well. She was always respected. There was nothing, there were sort of no issues. It was just maybe the driving was one of the things that she can now do and has been doing for a while as well. There's also been a change around. It's still modesty and clothing, but it looks different as well. There's a lot more sort of colors and in the clothing. And I have 2 girls, and they're fully active in sports and cultural events. And And for them, they could be in New Zealand. It's no different for them growing up in there as well. So, yeah, I don't know if someone wants to sort of jump in and kind of speak for what they've observed.
My wife grew up in Jeddah. So she was there when she was younger, which is about maybe 10, 15 years ago. And when we were coming back here, she was very hesitant to come back to what she thought was still Saudi. Riyadh is known to be more conservative than the south of Jeddah or the west coast. So coming in here, we thought it was going to be a lot more strict. Being here for 6 years, we've seen a lot of changes, like Donovan said. When we first came, my wife couldn't drive. Now I don't even see her anymore. I don't see the car anymore. So everybody's happy. So she gets to go out, do what she wants, meet with her friends. And again, with that respect in mind, where I know coming from a more conservative family that she's safe wherever she's at. And I don't have to worry about that. But it's very open compared to what it was 6 years ago. It's very colorful, as Donovan said. Women are in a lot more leadership roles than they used to. Some of our contacts in the military who've been really active with our school are women from very strong backgrounds. Some of the parent community hold the women in those households a lot of strong and very powerful positions in our community as well. Seeing that and interacting with that on a daily basis is very refreshing as well.
Thank you, Paul, and then Zeishan.
I'm just going to add in my observations, I guess. Obviously, I don't have any personal experience as a man, but you go to the local malls, you see expat females wearing, I won't say whatever they want. It's not like what you might find in a mall in a Western country, but as long as their shoulders are covered and their knees are covered, it seems fairly open. Living within the compound, it would seem that females can wear whatever they want. It's very Western, at least the compound where I live. I think it's intentionally set up like that, but it's like you could call it a bit of an enclave away from Saudi culture on the compounds. And I have friends who've come here as tourists and find it's females is not a problem. And it's that kind of idea that females are forced into a conservative kind of situations. I don't see that myself.
Thank you, Paul.
I've got a quick thing, and just an observation. Obviously, it's been a super interesting chat, and we haven't even got onto the technology. So I think we're going to have to do a second podcast, get everyone back for another one to talk about the tech stuff. Because I think the good news is, I think this podcast it's interesting to everyone, not just people in technology. But I want to just ask about who would enjoy going to Saudi. Obviously, we haven't mentioned money, but obviously, from what everyone says, the packages are quite good, especially if you're a teaching couple. You can go there and definitely save some money. Who is it? Would Saudi appeal to everyone, or is it younger people, middle-aged people? Like, is it teaching couples? Like, who have you seen enjoy it, or is it just kind of wide open for anyone who wants to try something an interesting new culture?
I can jump in quickly on that, and I think it's open to everyone. In MIS schools, we have a mix of teachers from a whole range of different backgrounds and different ages. Some younger and single, some more established with families and children. So I think it's open to anyone. I think the compound life definitely suits families, people with young children who find it very comfortable within the compounds. But just particularly from my background as a British Pakistani, Muslim coming to Saudi Arabia, it's been great for me. All the food is halal. I've had multiple opportunities to visit the holy cities. and do the pilgrimages. So I think someone from my background, a British Muslim, Western Muslim, coming to Saudi Arabia, where they can have that Muslim lifestyle with mosques, and they're able to visit the holy cities. That's very appealing for me and my family.
Great. Khalid, we're going to jump in.
Yeah, I agree with what Zishan was saying, coming from a similar background. Um, every one of those points is really bad. I also see that Saudi demographic is a younger demographic, and appealing to the younger generations to come in and having opportunities for them to come in and thrive in the country. And a lot of laws have been loosening a little bit more. In the past, our school was strict about hiring only couples, but as things got a little bit easier, hiring single teachers has been more common and more frequent. And our demographic in the school is anywhere between late 20s to early 50s, which is very diverse. But I think the country is pushing more toward the younger generation so they can build the school or the country a little bit more and make it a little bit more diverse.
Interesting.
Paul, you had something to say?
Yeah, I'll add that I would agree that it's definitely a very family-oriented posting to come here. Certainly where I work, there's a lot of British families, like teaching couples that are here. I would say it's not the place to come to if you want to go out clubbing on a Friday night and wake up the next morning and have a bacon buddy for your hangover. If that's the kind of thing that you're into, don't come to Saudi. There's not a great big nightlife here because there's no alcohol. It's very strict. There's no pork. If you have that, I guess the other side of that is it's a great place to save because there is not as much to do as there may be in, say, Dubai or Bahrain, which can be a good thing. And there's no tax, so it's a great place to come and save money. Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Donovan?
Yeah, just sort of jump in there. So I agree with the sort of couples things as well. And what we've kind of, what I've sort of seen, because we're a little bit north of Jeddah, is sometimes a couple will come in and only one of them's the teacher. But the opportunities for the spouse to get, like, as I said, sort of maybe in construction or that we've had in Kaust or down in Jeddah, like some opportunities for them to sort of further develop their career has been really quite surprising. So they've come over, they've got the teacher, the one, and then the spouse is sort of at home. And then there's been opportunities arise, and some really wonderful opportunities that some of my friends just say that maybe they wouldn't have had in the home of record. Again, this is because of the growth.
Interesting. I've got a friend of mine in Prague who's works in construction, and his wife's a teacher at an international school here, and they're thinking to go out there and do that same thing because they, there's a good chance he could get a job in construction, and obviously there's a lot of opportunities for international schools.
Yeah, I think whenever you have this immense growth and there are opportunities not only in one sector, but there's kind of a domino effect. You need more schools, you need more roads, more hospitals, and just seems like everything that you're sharing really highlights this phenomenal growth and the opportunities for people. And I think that's just so interesting to see a country go through so much change in such a short time, and also this ambition that you talked about, the 2030, and you read about it a lot in the press. And then Dan, did you go to Neon? Is that
no? I didn't. I've been to Riyadh. This was the year before last. I'm at Khalid. I've been briefly to Jeddah, and I went up to see Donovan in Kaust. I'm planning to come back next month, so I'm hopefully going to get to come and see you all in February. But no, I'm planning to go there a lot. I think Saudi Arabia is I think it's a lot of opportunity there. I think it's a fascinating place. It's a regional superpower, so there's so much going on there.
Yeah. And Dan, well, we were going to talk tech, but I think there's something so interesting to hear our guests who are living there, coming from very different backgrounds and in different situations. It's just been so rich to hear this life in Saudi Arabia, because I think so often we misunderstand, or there's so much kind of, narrow-minded perceptions on this wonderful, rich country with so much culture and the history which goes back to the dawn of time. I just think it's been wonderful to have you guys come on and share. And as Dan said, we'll definitely have to do this when just talk about nuts and bolts and wires. But I think this really, for me, has just been fascinating. And thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Anyone got any final comments? If not, we'll finish the pod.
Paul.
I'm just going to say thank you to Dan and John for this opportunity to share our lives here.
Great. And I just want to remind people that our guests have been very generous with show notes, and you can connect with them. So if you have got questions, or you want to follow them, or have anything you want to understand further about their situation in this wonderful country of Saudi Arabia that they're sharing about, just reach out through the show notes. Zeishan, you wanted to share?
No, that's all I was going to say. Is anyone listening, if they want to connect, hopefully they'll have that information, and feel free to reach out directly with any questions about Saudi Arabia. If you're thinking about Saudi Arabia, if you have any questions, and yeah, thank you for having us all, and would love to maybe do it again and get into the tech side of things as well.
Absolutely.
Great. Paul, Zishan, Donovan, Khalid. So I've realized I've been mispronouncing your name all this time and you never told me, but great to talk to you all. And thanks a lot for coming, and let's do it again soon. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much for being on the International Schools Podcast. We really appreciate it. Be well, everybody. Thank you.